During this time of uncertainty and difficulties, do we really need to be here to address the challenges of leadership? The answer is yes. We need leaders even more now to lead the way in the new normal. Because leaders are a special breed who rise to the occasion to thrive in the between. The between is an uncharted and unknown space, braved only by the enterprising. It is the hinges of leadership that require much wisdom, skill, and grace to navigate. It is a place of great potential, where the sky is not the limit, but only the beginning. It is the spaces in between where we learn to reframe, recover, and reinvent to rise in this life that we live. So, be prepared and learn from the best to navigate the hinges of leadership to thrive in the between. Welcome to Eagles Leadership Convention 2021.
Hi everyone, welcome to ELC 2021 and a masterclass on the topic of Is the Business of Business Just Business? I'm Cheryl, the Director for Corporate Responsibility for Asia at S&P Global, and I'm happy to be your moderator for today. Today we have with us three very esteemed speakers and practitioners in the field. They are Ms. Joy Lee, Executive Director of YICF, Mr. Ang Kian Peng, Director of Samsui Supplies and Services, as well as Ms. Tamara Gondo, co-founder of Liberty Society. And before we get started, we'd like to get to know you a little bit better, so we'll do that through Menti. Mentimeter is an online poll and quick survey. So to do that, go to menti.com, menti.com, and key in the password 1969 7426. We have some Mentimeter questions to kick us off today. So if you can go to menti.com, menti.com, and the code is 19697426. For those of you who have just joined us, welcome to the masterclass of Is the Business of Business Just Business? We're kicking off with two Mentimeter questions, and you can go to menti.com with the code 19697426. And you should be able to see this question on screen. Tell us, which country are you from? Fantastic. We see that we have quite a few joining us from Malaysia, Singapore, 22%, Indonesia, France as well as Philippines and Thailand. Great, we have a lot of friends from Malaysia and Indonesia. Fantastic, thank you for your quick response. And for the second Mentimeter question, which is very relevant to today's topic, what do you think is the purpose of business? So you can key in your answer into the Mentimeter as well. I see profit, still the biggest, sustainability coming in close, community, value, good, make money, people, I see people as well, quite big on the word cloud. Thank you very much for that. Today we'll learn about the purpose of business and how can we achieve the hybrid goal of social good as well as financial gain, and how social innovation can help us to rebuild communities, especially the forgotten places and the underserved. So to start with, let's get to know our speakers a little bit better as well. Joy, Kian Peng, Tamara, today our topic is the business of business just business, right? I'm very, very curious on your personal stories of what got you into this line of work. Maybe starting with Joy?
Sure. Thanks, Cheryl. It's great to be here with such a diverse group. So my name is Joy. I'm the director of YICF, which is a young nonprofit organization based in Jakarta, Indonesia. We create educational and vocational opportunities for underserved communities in our city, including unemployed youth, refugees, and waste pickers at Bantar Gebang, one of the largest landfills in the world. And we do that through various programs, three main programs called Life, Bersama, and Roshan, which I can unpack a little later. But really, how did I end up in the world of making business more than just business? I'm Korean American, but I've been living in Jakarta since 2014. My husband is Indonesian, and that prompted me to move here to get married. So I'm here for personal reasons, but also because I have a sense of calling to be here at this time in one of the largest nations in the world where there's so many developments happening. Most of my professional life, early professional life, was working with global interchurch organizations. So again, in the nonprofit world, and I was a conference organizer working with global level leaders and gathering them around important issues.
Right.
Once I moved here, I moved a little bit closer to the business world when I joined a business school to teach entrepreneurship and management. And that's when I really started to interact with the startup scene here, and especially the growing philanthropic scene, and a lot of interacting with a lot of social enterprises as I was teaching about social entrepreneurship. Then in 2018, I jumped further into the nonprofit world by joining YICF as its first executive director. YICF is still just getting started, and the programs are growing, but there was a need for more organizational support and bringing more structure and everything. So I've been with YICF since 2018, and it's been a pretty wild journey. And the biggest kind of development that happened under my leadership was the launch of our program called Bersama in 2019, where we had a very unique opportunity, actually through Tamra, a personal connection that Tamra made for us. It's a pretty crazy story, but somehow through a chain of events, a little nonprofit in Indonesia, we just got the chance to partner with a very large machine learning service firm, a global firm, to bring impact sourcing to Indonesia, and namely to so it's where you source labor, but with the purpose of impact. And you see this coming up a lot in the data labeling world. So there's so this is a big development in the space of data labeling for machine learning, where you have thousands of work opportunities being created for people to learn very entry-level data labeling tasks, and then to earn an income through that. And it's very accessible work, it's very scalable, and it's a growing industry. So we had an opportunity to launch in 2 months a very large opportunity to launch a program here. And since then, we've been partnering with this one firm, and we have a community now of 80 to 90 refugees and Indonesian youth who have been struggling to find jobs, gaining their first work experience, mainly professional work experience as freelance data labelers in our community and workforce. And we source the work and we manage a lot of these teams. So it's been a business kind of incubating under a nonprofit. And I think KP might share a little bit about seeing organizations trying to do that. And we have some lessons we are learning along the way. But yeah, that's how I'm kind of in this business and social enterprise.
Thank you very much for sharing, Joy. I think how you followed your calling to YICF and the innovative, I would say, jobs, employment and training program that you're running through the Bersama program. Next, let's hear from Kim Peng. Kim Peng, how did you get into this line of work and Samsui?
Okay, so for me, it's kind of like a coincidence. So for me, I'm not really, I'm actually an accountant, so by training. So I do accounting. So I was initially, my job was to do more on the corporate governance part of it. So then, as a corporate, we always have this CSR annually. So we get to visit all the nursing homes, all the childcare centers, and things like that. So along the way, we are thinking of like making something more sustainable. when you do corporate CSR, it's once a year thing, but, a lot of challenges, a lot of logistic issues have to come about when you are trying to plan for CSR, especially for the nursing home part of it. It mentioned the nursing homes have to stop all the activities, stop all the suppliers and all the actions just to kind of cater for that one day of CSR. So we realized that that's not very sustainable.
Correct.
And the other part of it is that, a lot of companies want to do CSR because of the media mileage, just for the one day show. So much effort has to go inside. And we realized that especially for NGOs or charities, I think the main focus is not to really take care of the food part of it. But for us as a company, food is our bread and butter. It's something that we do day to day. So this is something we thought, a skill set that we can bring to the table for the charities and the NGOs. So how does the whole system work is that we build an ecosystem where we get partners to come on board. So we get our suppliers who are able to supply the chicken. We get suppliers who are able to supply some vegetables to create a partnership. So in a way that, we kind of allow the charities for the nursing homes and all the charities to really focus on what they do best day to day. That is to really focus on taking care of the seniors, the children, and really the beneficiaries. And then they just focus on taking care of that rather than to worry about the day-to-day, whether the vegetable is coming in, the meat is coming in, whether your cook is coming in. That is one thing that we realized that is happening in the nursing homes. So we kind of structured our CSR into something more sustainable. We call it a sustainable CSR, where our model is not there to make abnormal profit, but we are there to build a business that is sustainable. So in such a way that I think one important thing is that since we are in F&Bs, we have all the expertise, we have the bulk purchasing power. This is where we can help the charities to really bring down the cost as well as to improve their efficiency. And this would take the charities off the mind to focus on their day-to-day business, which is taking care of the seniors and the beneficiaries. I think it works hand in hand. First of all, if the charities can just focus on whatever they do best, the inefficiency part, which is the things they're not doing, which is not their best expertise or where it's not their core competence, which is the taking care of the kitchen, then they don't have to worry about the inefficiency part. So basically what you are doing is that you're taking care of the inefficiency where it is really a cost center. So to become something that is sustainable and they can just focus on their real core business. And when they do fundraising, they don't have to worry about fundraising for the inefficiency. This is something that we comes in to help them. So for us is that we use our business expertise as a part of CSR and also to make it sustainable for the charities part of it.
Thank you so much for sharing that approach. I think to each one the strength, right? Have charities and social organizations do what they do best, take care of beneficiaries. And for yourself as an F&B business, how can you leverage on your supply chain, on your key competency to help provide nutritious food for the beneficiaries served by these charities? But Kian Peng, before going to Tamara, from an accountant to this line of work, is it a huge change?
Not really a huge change. So for me, it's I'm always like to do business. So I myself also, we started some other business when I was younger.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So it's always about enterprising. So what helps me is that as an accountant, you always look at ROI, numbers driven, crunching numbers. So it helps, in terms of you when you look at something like CSR or something like a social enterprise. A social enterprise is not just about doing good, but it has to be sustainable. So charity begins at home. So we are able to take care of our own employees, our own families. Then this is where we are able to take care of larger people, people at large. So I think as an accountant, that helps me to look at the numbers. So, for example, most of the F&Bs, the chef, all this, they are good at cooking, but the numbers part of it, there's still a bit of lacking. So this is why accountant is, it's important. We have to balance our balance sheet.
Sure. So you're using your numbers and your accounting skills to ensure that the numbers side of the business is taken care of as well, right?
Yeah, in terms of like food cost wise, the percentage, every percent you cut, how much saving you are able to save. And then when you present to the charities or the NGOs, this is how much money you can save. It makes sense to them as well.
Makes sense, makes sense. And now pivoting over to Tamara. Tamara, can you share with us your story on how you get into this line of work and Liberty Society?
Absolutely. Morning, everybody. So my name is Tamara. I'm co-founder and CEO of Liberty Society. We're a fashion social enterprise that empowers refugee women through creating corporate merchandising and lifestyle goods. So after I went back from the States for my study, taking sociology, I went to Biola. And then I started volunteering at nonprofits. And one of the space I visited was Joy's place called Russia. And that's when I first encountered the story of refugees in Indonesia. Previously in the States, along my studies, I have already been volunteering to help immigrants from Latin America and North America. And upon going here, it's just a life that is so distant from what I know of, coming from a comfortable background. So once I start understanding more about the life of refugees who came all the way from war-torn countries to Indonesia, having to live probably here, stranded in a limbo for average 8 to 10 years probably,
10 years.
It's a reality that I can't comprehend. And as a woman too, understanding their stories that previously in their home country, they're not allowed their rights to work nor education. It just touched me because I was allowed to go into the States and then coming back home and then as well as their business development intern. I saw that education alone is not enough. It has to be coupled with financial empowerment.
That's right.
So I saw that it's not only for me, God glorifying for me to have the right heart, but also operational excellence in a business sense is also as honoring to my gifts in me for my creator. That's the inspiration that I actually got from our other panelist, Joy, because the project that she got from this grant, I know she ran it very well and it became a sustainable project. Not a project, a business, right? Then personally for me, I think over the course of 2 years, it has been now, we created this social enterprise, managed to grow it, managed to train 40 refugees and counting, and managed to increase the income for these refugees as well. At best, probably 3 to 4 times.
Great. Thank you so much, Tamara. Sometimes our lives are touched through volunteering, and I think you have a lot of empathy, and you have now dedicated your work and your time to Liberty Society to make a tangible contribution to social justice. And I find that very admirable. Thank you for sharing, Tamara. And circling back to Joy, actually. Joy, you briefly shared about the program at YSCF on Bersama, training and education for refugees and also early childhood education for children at the waste landfills. Can you share with us a bit of the social innovation and thought process behind how you can avail these economic opportunities and inclusion for these underserved communities?
Yeah, I think it's, I come from a very diverse background, having grown up in a few continents, and then going from, being a political science student, then doing my MBA, working with church organizations, jumping into business education and all that. And I've often wondered, what does all that amount to? And I think increasingly I'm realizing when it comes to solving problems and really changing lives, whether it's, refugees with limited options or people who have been in generational cycles of poverty, or just young people that don't know what they can do in this world and are facing huge barriers to work. I think it's about having an interdisciplinary approach and being able to combine pieces and assemble thought processes from different fields and bringing it together in an innovative and unusual way that might not make sense to everybody, but when you put it together, it starts to yield results. So, for example, YSCF, we're a nonprofit, but we tend to be more of a bridge between the private and social sector. We actually avoid the public sector as much as possible because things slow down when you involve the government here in Indonesia. But we love working with the private sector hand in hand. Like Kim Ping was saying, there's different areas of expertise, right, that are brought to the table by both sectors. And the thing, you see a huge gap in the nonprofit world where a nonprofit person sits down with a business person and they say, let's do something good together. And then there's this disconnect. They can't talk each other's language. There's the same heart, but then a lot of initiatives just crumble because the nonprofit can't move fast enough or put themselves in the shoes of the business and see what's their interest. Why would they get involved? How does this advance the business's, overall strategy and all that? And on the vice versa, a lot of business people try to get involved and they want to make things sustainable, but they lose patience. A lot of things are relational and very complex, especially poverty. It's a web of factors, right? And so it gets frustrating. So we're trying to be that bridge. So every day I'm applying business concepts to nonprofit work. It's so useful. I mean, I'm telling people left and right, just go get your MBA if you want to do good in this sector.
Get an MBA
I've actually
to do
sent
good, right?
multiple people there. Yeah, so I've convinced so many people, especially a lot of my former students, to go get their MBA and then join me in my work or do things. Even Tamara, I've been telling her, go finish your business degree, right? But it's like, for example, seeing beneficiaries. We don't call them beneficiaries. We see them as participants, and seeing, okay, how do we see the problem? Not as, oh, they need something from us, but more, hey, they deserve a high quality service or product that has not been made accessible to them. They're not being served properly by the current market systems. Where are the inefficiencies and lack of coordination? And how do we bring better alignment there? So we act as kind of like a broker. So for example, like data labeling work is so accessible, but there's an English barrier here. People don't know about this type of work, or there's just big firms have no idea how to reach communities and build trust. But they need people in underserved communities to do the work. They're not going to get wealthy people doing this type of work. So how do we bridge that understanding? So we work with large firms and saying, okay, if you really want people to stick with you and not freelance with you one day and then disappear, you're really going to have to build a relationship and some kind of meaningful contact with them. So let's have educational programs that attract them and retain them. And let's make it a learning experience, not just making income, but let's pump them with professional development and cheer them on when they get a full-time job, but create a bridge experience. So we work hand in hand with business that way. The other big thing that we emphasize a lot more is even bringing concepts from the faith sector. So I'm a Christian, and recently I was sitting in talk with a data labeling firm that's struggling. They have so many data labelers, but now they don't know how to develop them and grow them. And they're like, we want community, but it's so hard when you have like 50,000 people.
Right.
And, there's a concept called discipleship, where you develop leaders who take care of a group of 10, 15 people under you. And that's how you multiply impact and community. And so I didn't say discipleship, but I started to introduce that concept and how we do it in Bersama. And they're fascinated because there's a business application. it makes a difference in quality. So going back and forth between the sectors. And the other big concept we're pushing now is multiplication through transformed lives. So Tamara is a perfect example of that.
Transform lives, okay.
Yeah. So, in business, you look at multi-sided markets, and, if you're a platform, for example, you connect vendors with buyers, and you're serving both markets. And nonprofits, there's so much focus on just the beneficiaries, and everything is sacrificed for the beneficiaries. And then you get burnout, you get poor quality programming, you get unsustainable things. But if you focus on everyone involved in your work, all of your stakeholders, including donors and partners, and making their involvement as a transformative experience, a learning and growth experience, you don't have to do it all yourself. For example, we are so glad that Tamara volunteered with us, but then through her transformation, serving with us, she used her gifts and talents to start a new initiatives that synergizes a lot with some things that we do. But we didn't have to create a new program and set up another theory of change and all of that and pump more resources. She went out and did it herself. but we're still connected, and then our ecosystem keeps growing. And we don't do that just with people who are donors and givers, but also participants in our programs. We need them in leadership positions in our programs. And so we have refugees serving as functioning as staff.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. I think you brought up three very important points. One is that there are applications and transferable concepts between the different spheres, right? Like we've mentioned, business concepts can be applied to the social sector, spiritual concepts of discipleship can be applied to the social sector, and how you act as a bridge, both for common and shared understanding and a common language between, the different stakeholders across the different sectors, but how you also act as a bridge to bring knowledge, opportunities, training, education, products and services to be more accessible to these participants that you serve. And your last point on how can there be a multiplier effect through changed lives, not just from the participant or the beneficiary point of view, but in a whole ecosystem of stakeholders, right? From everyone who gets involved in your work. How can you impact and have each one of them transform so that they are all each bigger and can make even better contributions? Thank you for sharing that, Joy. Now going over to campaign. SYNOPSIS is a social enterprise that has been increasingly, recognized over the years, and there's now the social kitchen as well that you have started over the last few years. How is it really, achieving the hybrid goals of social good and financial gain? I believe that it's not an easy task at all.
I think first and foremost, I think every time when we start a business, it has to make a business sense. There has to be a business case or a business model to ensure it is sustainable. So, that's what I shared just now. As a social enterprise, I think at the end of the day, it's not about making huge abnormal profit, but it's about how we sustain ourselves. Eventually, you need to pay your employees. So, for example, when we hire beneficiaries, we just want to hire them, not just because we want them to do a job, but it's about career progressions. For example, we hire special needs in the social kitchen where, when we first hire them as a service crew, as a waiter, then now progressively we make them into a restaurant managers, and eventually he wants to be a GM. He wants to be a boss of the companies. So this guy is intellectually challenged, but eventually we are able to push an envelope, from the kind of perspective. Initially we always had this stereotype. People with special needs are never able to do a job of normal people. But what we look at them is a strength. So if our business is not able to survive, we are not able to pay them the kind of salary that they command. So for example, where we started off as a junior workers, as a service crew, their pay will not be as high as a manager. So if we are not able to grow as a business, there's no revenue, there's no income, there's no way we can provide them the kind of allowance they can bring back. So what you are looking at is that's why the business has to make business sense. Eventually, it's not about us making a profit, but it's about how we can uplift the life of the beneficiaries. To ensure that today they are getting 1,000, the next few years they can get 5,000, 6,000. There's a progression. So if the business are not able to grow, there's no way you can pay them that kind of price, and there's no progression for them. So this is how we look at it. So the social enterprise has to be a growing social enterprise, has a business case. And when you have a business case, you are able to fill the gaps. So you look at the social kitchen itself. Social kitchen is a very interesting concept. It's a normal concept we started last year. It's about a cloud kitchen. So during COVID, a lot of deliveries, right? So government shut down. There's a lot of policy changes. Are not able to dine in. So this is why the social kitchen comes about. It is about riding on the wave. There's a gap to be filled. Where there's COVID, that's why we started in COVID. We use social kitchen as a cloud kitchen where we do delivery, where we do people order from platform. And at the same time, we use social kitchens to garner the support of the F&Bs. So we brought in 90 over years old of heritage brand, where they find it very challenging during COVID times to really kind of grow or to survive. So using the cloud kitchen model concept, we are able to allow them to have a platform to do delivery and to really kind of like pivot into another verticals where they are able to cater to the customers. And we fill a gap of the businesses where they need another platform.
Right.
And we also fill the gap of the beneficiaries. So you look at COVID time, a lot of beneficiaries will be the first to be laid off.
Yeah.
Regular people already got laid off. What about the special needs? This is where there's sort of gaps. We marry the business of the existing FMBs, and then we also marry the business. The needs of the beneficiaries who needs a job. Then we work with the landlord to create an ecosystem where it's a triple win. The landlord win, the beneficiary wins, and then the business also win. So most importantly, I think most recently we also closed our partnerships with Unilever, one of the big players globally. And then we also tie up with Landlease. It's also an international property company. So to run a plant-based concept.
A plant-based concept?
Yeah, so so we are always pivoting into new business, new sectors. So I think the plant-based concept is up and coming concept. It's about, the world will not be sustainable without a sustainable planet.
Correct.
So there's no CSR to begin with. If we have all these droughts and all these flood. So what we are trying to advocate is that we are trying to get people to be pivoting to more vegetable food. Maybe not really a vegetarian, but we call it a flexitarian. You don't have to eat meat every day, Monday to Sunday. But what we're trying to convert you is that you just have to eat vegetables or plant-based products on alternate days.
Alternate days, okay.
So
plant-based diet.
Plant-based. So
Okay.
you are able to bring down the carbon emission. So then it's more sustainable. So this is where we can move the needles. So if everyone pivot into a flexitarian kind of diet, we are able to reduce the carbon emissions quite greatly. And this is where we are able to create a more sustainable planet. So at the same time, because plant-based is up and coming, so there will be a lot of employment opportunities. So why we need to go inside pivot into a plant-based is that, once you pivot into a sunrise industry, then we are able to bring more beneficiaries on board, create employment opportunities.
Yeah.
So if you look at us, is that we are always looking at business opportunity first. Then how do we fill the gaps and then integrate the beneficiaries into the business? I think that has to be the foremost, the most important objective to build a sustainable business model, and then we are able to uplift the life of the beneficiaries. Because once you uplift the life of the beneficiaries to give them allowance to go back home, it's not just creating an impact on one person, because you are uplifting the entire family.
That's right.
Imagine you help a special needs to become some managers. The parents can be proud of it. The entire family can be proud of it. You're also helping the parents who are not able to work in the past to be able to return to the workforce, to contribute to the economy. So in a way, it's very, very, very kind of like helping the entire village.
That's right.
So we also work with churches. So we work very closely with churches. Our cloud kitchens operate in church premises.
Oh.
So that is very interesting. So we work with St. Mary's on the Angels. It's a Catholic churches. We work with Agape, which is a Catholic premises. And then we also work with YMCA, which is also a Christian organization. So we work very closely with the Christians, the churches to run cloud kitchen, because we realize that the churches has huge space. So to be a good steward of God resources, we have to make sure that the space is well utilized. And we also work with Marriage on Angels as part of their outreach arm. So we free the friars, to be able to focus on their day-to-day Bible studies, and then we do the outreach for the churches. I think that's one way we help. One way we integrate with the churches as well, to be one of the outreach arms. So I think what we really want to do is, to help the church outreach to the community. I think the purpose of the church is also to be able to help the community at large. So this is where we work hand in hand with the churches.
Thank you for sharing, Kim Ping. You mentioned a few important points that I'll just like to highlight. You mentioned that business is in business, not just because of wanting to be a business, right? But business employs people, And by providing those employment to people with disabilities or the disadvantaged, you are able to improve their income and economic inclusion in a very tangible way. And when you have a business model that has a strong business case, all these gaps in the industry that you have identified, the business case is solid, and when the business grows, the number of people that you can employ grows as well. And when each one of them is not just a person you hire for a job, but they are able to develop their career with you, they are able to grow, like you've mentioned, from a junior staff, a waiter, maybe to a senior manager, maybe to a general manager. They improve their skills, they get to reach their potential, but also increase their income, and how they can also bring positive change back to their families and loved ones, right? So thank you for sharing that. And over to Tamara. Tamara, at Liberty Society, you are able to also advocate for the economic inclusion of women refugees. And over the last 1.5 years, the whole world has been disrupted by COVID-19 and all a wide range of socio-economic challenges. How did you cope?
How did we cope? Definitely our communities were hit hard in terms of the mental health. I think the stability of the business too, that we have to go back to the drawing board and rethink what will be the next step for us. Tangibly, it's for location of our stores and retail. Retail has been our bread and butter, was closed down. And that resulted us to a loss of sales. And then I think we saw the opportunity rise up in the fact that sustainability become a trend in the world. And we jumped the wagon to go into B2B. And then this B2B setup of our business model, we managed to grow 300% over the past 12 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
Pivoting to B2B in the last 12 months instead of shrinking, you have grown 300%.
Yes.
Wow.
We switch our model. Our B2C become the minority of our revenue generation model. But it also comes from a heart where it's not simply what profit and where can we get the profit. We don't follow the profit. We follow the people. We follow our makers. We follow our staff. We follow what they're saying. The B2C model for our business, it doesn't give stable enough income for our makers. So we have to think, how can we have a better financial planning for our makers? And that is enabled by working long-term with businesses that gives them more money at a more stable rate because they're producing by the mass quantity, not just at every B2C purchases. That has been the heart. I think I'd love to talk about a just business entails the leader's script. You've heard us speak about the people, the operational culture, the operating model, but the leader's script itself have to be deeply ingrained. So what has been tested in COVID time, in times of challenges, is do I actually really want to create this business in order to bless people and sacrifice myself? For me, just business is, in the words of Andy Crouch, one of the person that really just models out this redemptive business idea is, he says, businesses that is joining this creative restoration through sacrifice. So for me in my business, it means that how do I keep myself accountable in my culture and processes and with my management team to not really, even though we grew 300%, the profit goes back to be reinvested to the impact that we committed to. Because if you see big companies nowadays, the more that they grow, even though yes, their mission is noble as it is, connecting and building communities and bringing the world closer, if that sounds familiar to you. But then in the end, there might be operations that are deeply exploitative towards the people's privacy of data.
Right.
So being more intentional about these things for me looks like at the end of the day, at the end of the year, really looking into the numbers and having just enough profit margin to be reinvested and have been set in the beginning of where we want the money to go. Too much at the end of the day for us and not for the people, then we fail. So the metrics of success for us changes. It's no longer just the bottom line, but all the story that goes into creating that bottom line and where the bottom line eventually goes to.
Thank you, Tamara. I think when you mentioned the matrix of success, right? Traditionally in the business world, the matrix for success is always how much profit have you shored up? How much reserve do you have? But I like that your success matrix is how much people have their lives changed, how much of that profit actually went to the people instead of getting sort of shored up within the business, and the benefits doesn't sort of translate to the people. And how can you also be accountable in the business process? In the sort of old world of CSR, it's always, I make business, my business model is like this, and then if I have any additional, sort of monies, I would donate that away to give back to the society. But I think in the, I would say, true definition of business is how can you be responsible in the making of that dollar, that your business process honors the stakeholders, your business process and operations honor the people, and have them benefit to have a positive impact of them through the process and not just the end outcome itself by donating charity dollars, right?
If I can add on a little bit, it's also the way that we do our pricing model to make sure that it genuinely adds value to the customer. But on the back end, as a fashion company, usually if people doesn't like the price, we push the cost down on our makers. But for us to really make a commitment in the company where no, we're not going to go past a certain threshold to be able to give fair wages for our makers.
Right. So it's not just who produced it the cheapest and competition of the share of wallet, but to ensure that it's a fair price, so that you are able to give fair wages to the makers and the producers of that good and services, right?
Yes.
And thank you for sharing that, Tamara. I'd like to wrap up our sort of conversation this morning through a question before we open up for Q&A. I think our audiences are all ready to share their questions with you as well. Joy, Kim Ping, Tamara, after sharing so much and your extensive experience in this line of work, what is your definition of the purpose of business, and what is your definition of business? Maybe starting with Joy.
Sure. This is what I would always bring first day of class for entrepreneurship, the practicum that I studied. So I'll just read off of it. There's a dean of the Seattle Pacific University Business School, Jeff Van Duzer. I love the way he words it, and I think this applies to nonprofits as well. So business exists to serve the community in two key respects. First, business serves by creating economic value in the form of products and services that enable the community to flourish. And for nonprofits, you could just say nonprofit serves by creating economic and social value in the same way. Second, business serves by providing opportunities for individuals to express aspects of their God-given identities in meaningful and creative work. So this is how I define business, and this is what drives me, but this also influenced the way I see nonprofit work and what we're meant to do.
Thank you, Joy. I think that's a very beautiful definition of business, how business can generate economic value by providing products and services for people to flourish. And business is a conduit and a platform to provide the opportunities for people to use their gifts and strengths and talents and to grow, right? Thank you. That's a very beautiful definition of business. Kim Ping, what is your definition of the true purpose of business?
Well, I think my definition of business is like doing good is also a business. So by doing good, you are also creating a very impactful impact on the communities. So I think what you need to do is that if you really do good, I think that is part of the business motto. But what do you mean by doing good is that by identifying business gaps that helps the community, That's by doing good. For example, you look at the plant-based products. It's about saving the environment, saving climate. Saving the earth. So that is also doing good. So by doing good, you are able to create good employment opportunities for the beneficiaries. So you are able to uplift the life of the underprivileged group. That is also doing good. So this is where you are able to generate the income for the families as well as generate more activities for the economy as a whole. Yeah, so this is how I look at the business.
So how is you're in the business of doing good, right? And leveraging business for good. And how when your business champions for a good cause, you're able to provide employment for people, and the people that you have employed are also naturally, advocating and championing, contributing to that social and environmental cause as well, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Kim Ping. And Tamara, what is your definition of business?
Yeah, no, I think the other two panelists said it really, really well. I would just like to add on that business is an amazing force for good that can redeem and renew culture. That us as a leader have to just have a lot of contemplation, compassion, and wisdom running through it. Because it's not about just starting it up, but maintaining these values of the just business that actually is the bulk of the work.
I think compassion, contemplation, and wisdom is probably the foundational values of businesses today. In the past, it's always, productivity, efficiency, and, profit at all cost. But now, today, I think business, as you've mentioned, is a powerful force for good. And if we have leaders like all three of you who are able to be compassionate, but have a strong business sense and make wise decisions both in the business outcome as well as in the business operations, you're able to be such an amazing force for good. Thank you for that sharing. We'll now pivot over to Q&A. And before going to Q&A, we'll like to hear a bit from our audience. Again, using Mentimeter, you can go to menti.com, menti.com, and with the code 19697426, and tell us, after hearing, the stories and the experiences of Joy, Kim Ping, Tamara, how has your perspective of business changed? Do you agree with the more beautiful definition of business? Is business able to be truly a force for good, or is that impact washing? Or I do see collaborative coming up, responsible, impact in the lives change, creating opportunities, excellent, purpose, honoring people. Fantastic. If I can have the speakers to comment a little bit of the perspectives of our attendees, and I'll also invite the attendees to start keying the questions into Mentimeter as well, so that we can have the last 30 minutes as an open Q&A to our speakers. Maybe Joy, what is the keyword that you would like to highlight amongst this word cloud?
I think collaborative and honoring people. I think that stood out to me. Collaboration is actually one of our new updated values for our organization, and it goes hand in hand with our fifth value of entrepreneurship, actually. But in this day and age, you can't really accomplish much without collaboration, whether it's in business or in nonprofit work. So I'm encouraged to see that came across. And the other thing, honoring people, I would add honoring relationships. Again, that applies to partnerships, building good, long-term, durable partnerships. It comes from honoring people, whether it's sitting in a meeting or telling the truth when things are not going right. But strong collaboration comes from honoring people and relationships. Well said, whoever said that.
Great. So you see, your keyword is collaboration and then honoring people and honoring relationships as well, right? Kim Ping, what is your favorite word amongst the perspectives of our our listeners and attendees today?
I think it has to be sustainable. So because sustainable is something that is our what call it, our vision. So the social kitchen vision is sustainable food powered by sustainable workforce.
Sustainable food powered by sustainable workforce. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So this is our vision. So our company motto. So what do you mean by sustainable food? So we are always sourcing our food from a sustainable source. So it has to be sustainable. Then our planet will be sustainable, and then we are able to create a better environment for our future generations. What do you mean by a sustainable workforce? So COVID provides us a very good opportunities to really look inwards. Because of all the borders are closed. So we are able, it's actually forced us to look into our labor force that we have never thought of tapping before. For example, the special needs. For example, people who are disabled. These are the workforce that has never been really thought of in the past before the border was closed. Because in the past, we are always looking at cheap labor. So we import our labors from developing countries. So we bring them in. So because of the borders or due to this COVID, I think it's actually forced us, give us a chance to renew our entire interest to look into employment people with special needs or the disabled. So this is why we call it the sustainable workforce. So our workforce has to be sustainable, then the business is sustainable.
Thank you. Yeah. Sustainable food from a sustainable workforce. That's a very catchy tagline. Yeah. Tamara, what is the keyword that resonated with you the most?
Honoring others. Because honoring others is easy to say, but it's very hard in praxis.
Indeed. It's easy to say, right? It probably is on the values and mission of most of the organizations, but difficult to live out in day-to-day operations and decisions. And actually, we have very, very excellent questions coming in. And maybe I'll start first with a question for Joy. The question is, you mentioned bridging the gap between social organizations and the business private sector. Can you share some more practical strategies to bridge the gap between these different sectors for collaboration?
Yeah, I think one thing is testing, piloting constantly. I'm a big fan of agile development rather than waterfall methods. So, you don't, I think a lot of nonprofits, they promise too much when they work with a company that wants to do CSR, for example, and they say, we can do this and this and this, and then they overpromise, underdeliver. But our approach to collaboration is start very small, even go for the low-hanging fruit, something so simple that it's foolproof. And then build a success case. So then your partner wants to work with you again. So I'm talking from the nonprofit perspective. If you want a company to keep working with you, prove that you can be reliable and you understand what you are doing. And don't sugarcoat it with a lot of fancy nonprofit terms. I think sometimes I sit in meetings where nonprofit leaders are trying to impress, or even employee interviews. I'm like, you don't need to say all that. It's just, what are you trying to do? Let's just use normal terms. But they use all these language from grad schools and research papers and all of that. And it's so much fluff. So cut out the fluff, get to the real heart. What exactly are you trying to do? And business people will work with you more readily if you get to the main meat of the collaboration. The other thing is, I would say, be very transparent about what you can and cannot do. Again, look internally at your core competencies as an organization. What is your bread and butter? What is something you're very good at doing? So when we got into data labeling, I knew nothing about data labeling. We learned, but we're still learning. And people think, there's endless opportunity because there's infinite amounts of data, but it's a red ocean already. It's becoming commoditized. So now we're 2 years into this. Yeah, anybody can label, but we're honing into management. Not many companies can manage people well to get the results they want. So that's the value we bring to partnerships. Then how do we build a business model around that? How do we price that? What are they willing to pay for good management and good recruiting and sourcing, right? And we're still figuring it out. And one of the big conclusions we reached, recognize when you need to hand it over to a business person. So we're looking at separating the education aspect, because our educational programs under Bersama really enhance worker value to the companies. But we run the education side well. The data labeling side, I mean, I don't want to spend hours and hours trying to figure out how to price data labeling. So let's hand that to a business that has a similar value, but they can run the business side as a business. And then let's remain available to help them with community issues, social issues that come up when you're working with these communities. So yeah, I would say no, those three things. Just start small and simple. Don't overpromise. Be clear in your language. Know what you're good at and focus on that. And then know when you need to hand over to a business person.
Thank you, Joy. I think those points, right? Under promise, over delivering. Starting small but solid. And having your strength, your value proposition, right? Sometimes in collaboration between the social organization and the private organization, the social organization would say, partner with me to do good, full stop. And the private sector is supposed to respond. But to your point, if the social organization can also outline the value proposition and the gap in the opportunity that you are able to help bridge, that creates a much stronger pull factor for the private sector to also say, yes, let's collaborate, let's work together, right?
Absolutely. And you're right, the pull factor, they come to you. Once you start creating value, you don't have to go out hunting for partners. They'll come to you and you pick the ones that are right for your mission.
Thank you, Joy. Kim Peng, I know you have a lot of experience working across sectors, actually public, social and business sectors. What are some of your secret sauce and tips there on that front?
Oh, so is my source is like identify the gaps that they face. So the public will, for the public sectors, the government sectors, they will have gaps that, for example, how to outreach to the business community. So this is where we kind of fill the gaps. And then we look at, for example, the cloud kitchen concept. We know that the churches have spaces. We know that churches wanted to do a lot of things for the community. But how do we do that? So this is where our expertise comes in. And then we know that businesses need to survive through the COVID, especially the rental is not coming down, the manpower resources is really terrible. So this is how we kind of identify the gaps and then put everything together to piece up everything. So I think that's how it works.
To have the resources or unutilized bandwidth of the different stakeholders, and you are then the bridge to bring them together, right?
The other thing is to be able to communicate in their lingos. For example, you talk to the businesses, as for businesses, you talk about CSR. This might be a very big word to them. For them, is that the concern is how do I survive through the COVID time? You don't tell me about charities, you don't tell me about other things. So the lingo you speak to them. How do you bring the proposition to the tables to tell them, hey, actually by doing this, you're not just doing good, but you're also helping your business.
How can there be a business proposition and a business case first and foremost, and doing good is the outcome, right?
So we got a very classic example that we bring in on board one of the best prata chain in Singapore.
Prata chain.
Yeah. So
okay.
Prata, roti prata, the Indian South Indian cuisine.
Okay.
So this guy is so we operate in the Catholic premises, agape, church premises. So this guy is a Hindu. The founder is a Hindu. But because of his, he has some affiliations to the Catholic. So I went to him. I told him, hey, why not we do something that help your businesses as well? It also goes back to helping the people. So almost immediately he said, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so we are able to bring on board people quite a good established prata chain to come on board with us.
I see. That's great. That's great. Tamara, in running Liberty Society, what are some of the techniques and tactics that you have learned to have, cross-sector collaboration?
For us, it's those with mission alignment that has been mentioned. I think secondly, we're not afraid to venture into new industries. We've gone into working with bakeries, with F&B, FMCG, but it's all towards the same mission. And hopefully, I think what really works for us is look for those that have similar, in marketing word, SES or target audience. If not, I think we've learned that the initiatives just wouldn't really work if the people that you're targeting is different market, too much of a different market.
So how can you have mission alignment, but yet also have the courage to try out slightly unfamiliar fields, to kind of expand the comfort zone, but yet also not venture into totally risky zones and areas as well. Great,
Yes.
great. I have a really, really good question here, and maybe starting with you first, Tamara. The question is, social transformation often give the impression of a long-term effort. What are the time frame for you to revisit the progress and define success?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. I love talking about this part. Definitely, I think it probably take years of your life and your entire lifetime.
Yes.
But for us, we've been doing this, me personally, relationship building with the people that I try to impact for years. Continuously and constantly giving of myself and building that and maintaining that. For my business, 2 years. The impact that we assess is every quarter. There's one-on-ones, just like how Google does it, one-on-ones with their managers and subordinate employees. But then in terms of assessing impact, we measure a couple of things. Number one is their quantitative growth, level of income, household safety. Then there's qualitative, which talks about increasing social emotional well-being, the sense of community, the level of confidence. Those are done in 2 ways, where we do surveys, and then we also do one-on-one interviews with them, either quarterly or monthly. But oftentimes when there are cases such as what happened in Afghanistan, we have to do that time-sensitive check-in as well with them.
So it's a lifetime of work, right? But also from a quarterly perspective, you check in with the participants, and you have both quantitative and qualitative matrix. Quantitative, how has their income increased, but also qualitative on their well-being and their quality of life, social, emotional health and well-being is also indicators of success in the short term that can build into long-term resilience and transformation, right?
Yeah, the word resilience, Cheryl, I love just getting and delving deeper into the personal connection of success, because as an organization, it takes a longer time. We have our 5 years plan where we're going to be working with 1,000 companies and impacting 100 artisans and whatnot. But to get there, often it's exhausting. So how do we get that resilience is actually from building these personal connections, you personally encouraging your management to, and getting these success stories to help the journey.
Success stories always inspires and warms the heart and keep the flame alive, right? Kim Peng, to you, social transformation is not done in a day. It's a long-term process. What is your take on this? What is the time frame, and how can you define success in social transformation?
So I think for social transformations, it's always for us. It's always an ongoing process, because the environment changes, landscape changes, the business landscape changes. So it's kind of like trying to be aligned with the social needs, what's happening around. I think for us, it's always an ongoing. And as for when do we revisit, actually we are very reactive. So every time there's changes, we react very fast. So this is how we run the business like a startup. You have to be very, very kind of like connected, agile. So we don't take a long time for some of the bigger company, the corporates will take about 2-3 years to come up with policies. So by then the situation will change. For us, it's like, it's always ongoing. So the social transformations for us is like a business.
Right.
It's like we always kind of like very put our fingers and our feet on the ground to
Right.
feel the ground, to feel whatever is moving, whatever is doing well, whatever is not doing well. And for that, we kind of like change accordingly. So for us, it's always constant changing, always constantly align ourselves with the needs of the community, the businesses. I think that's very important for us. Like for us, how do we measure success? Our measure success is like, it's not about impacting a lot of people, but we look at, how do we help someone, for example, the special needs, to be able to plan a career progression for him, be able to from a junior service crew to managers to the next level, the GM levels. So this is the success. So it becomes an aspiration for all. So you just help him one person. So right now he's able to tell the stories to all his peers. So imagine all his peers also want to become a manager. So this is an aspiration to everyone, to all his peers. So this is where we say that it's not about how many people you help, the
Right.
impact. So I was always been asked by the banks. So we always give talks to the VPs, the senior VPs of the banks. So they always ask us, always ask me very good questions. For them, measure of success is about financial returns. It's about how is your profit. So I told them that, if we are into the financial returns, I think it's better for us to go inside fund managing, just manage the funds and don't have to talk about the social works. So how do we? So for us, it's like the definition of success is not the financial returns, but how do we uplift the life of a person? Giving him, for example, the income that he earns now and compared to the income he's going to earn in the next few years' time. And if he's able to start a new family on his own, I think that is also a big success for us as well.
So financial viability of the enterprise is to keep the enterprise going so that employment can continue and you can continue to be a platform to provide opportunities for people, right? And I love your point about it's not about the number of people reached. Sometimes in our work, maybe in the private sector or in the social sector, we always like to talk about large quantities. I don't know, sometimes the large numbers are impressive. But in the work of social and life transformation, it's not so much going broad and how many people that you can reach, but very superficially. But how do you go deep into the life of each person and to truly transform the life and the well-being of that person and that person's family, right? Joy, I know that you would have thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think we're constantly trying to navigate the balance between scale and helping as many people as possible with the resources that we have, but also going deeper. And I think one thing we love to do is working with the people we're already working with, but seeing the opportunities available for them, multiplying, and they have more options, because when you're underserved, sometimes the problem is just that you have only one horrible option available to you, and that's the only one you can take, that one horrible school in your neighborhood or no school, right? So I think helping people richly is something that I don't hear a lot yet, but right now there's a big push in the social enterprise scene to help people. Every social enterprise website you go to is going to have impact numbers, 2 to 3 impact numbers highlighted on that landing page. But over time, like Kim is saying, it's the stories that come out. And I think one good mark of social transformation happening is when the stories keep spilling out and your marketing team has a hard time keeping up with it and even just organizing it, because the stories are just everywhere. I think that's when your story bank is very rich, that's a sign of social transformation happening at a wider scale beyond your program outputs and your log frames or whatever. And I think another good mark of change happening is when you see the circles of influence rippling out. So at the beginning, for example, our refugee learning center started with a few families in a church, working with a few families. But now it's grown to involving schools in their neighborhood and international schools of wealthy kids, even wondering how to have more compassion towards refugees. And then you see their parents being changed and affected and paying attention. And they are connected to politics and all of that. So if you start seeing the ripple effect, and our vision is to see a city where all people flourish and multiply good works. So I think when you start to see whole neighborhoods coming together and changing, I think that's where you see social transformation happening beyond what you even might have set out to do.
I think, Joy, the ripple effect of doing good and the expansion of the circle of influence, right? Whenever we have a social enterprise or a non-profit, you start small, but as the good work and as lives are changed, the ripple effect of all the stakeholders in the ecosystem and your circle of influence starts expanding. And then you can achieve both the deep sort of transformational change for each individual, but your scale of the work can also start to expand from there, right? We have time for, say, last two questions. And this is a very interesting question. How should we determine when an organization should remain 100% nonprofit or pivot to a social enterprise and business? What qualities distinguish the two in order to best build the community? So maybe the question to Kim Peng first.
So I also got to ask. I mean, a lot of people ask this question
a lot
also.
of people ask me this question.
So I was also advising charities also. So because the charities also try to pivot into a social enterprise model. So I told the charities, first of all, I think you started off as a charity. So you get a funding from the public, from the charities, the donors and stuff like that. So if you are charities, I think why not just focus on being a charity? Now, why do you want to use the donors' money and then set up a social enterprise as a business enterprise and to run it? And the other thing is that, when you set up a business, a social enterprise, the people that's running it is different. You cannot get the social workers to run a social enterprise because it doesn't work that way. So I think a lot of charities, if you look at the today's world, is that the charity will set up a business cafe, and then who is going to run the cafe? Who's the restaurant manager for a cafe? The restaurant manager for a cafe is a social worker. So that means it's not a fit, right? So that's not the right fit.
Right.
So I think for me, it's like if you start out as a charity, just focus on taking care of beneficiaries, but the business part of it, you should not try to dabble into or pivot into the business part of it. Just let the business run it. So if you have, for example, if I'm a F&B owner, if you set up another cafe and F&Bs, why would I want to support you as a charity? Because you are kind of like pivoting into my competitors in a business world. Doesn't make sense for me to be helping you as a business owner. So business-wise, doesn't make sense. So I say that if you are a charity, just focus on being a charity. The business part of it, what you want to do with the business is that you got a lot of beneficiaries. You be the gap or be the bridge between the beneficiaries and the business. So that means you still serve your purpose as a charity. But if you want to be a business, then the mentality is very different. It's never about donors' money.
And ideally run by business people as well. And on the charity side of the house, we will always need non-profit and social organization, because not every social issue can be solved with a business model. And have these expert and experienced social workers and social practitioners to help the beneficiaries and the participants in the non-profit space.
Yeah.
Great. Joy and Tamara, any thoughts to add to that question? When should you stay 100% non-profit, and when should you be a social enterprise?
Well, we're actually in the point of researching hybrid options, because it's pretty common in Indonesia, where you have a social foundation linked to a business entity. And what are the structuring options for that? Because it's one thing, like there's growing demand for us to provide like consulting services to other nonprofits or social impact initiatives. That seems to be of value. And so we're just softly exploring, maybe we should just set up a business entity for tax purposes. If people do want to pay us to do something that we're already good at as a nonprofit, okay, then yeah, pay us. We'll take it, and then we'll enjoy the profit, right? So we're just in the initial stages of exploring that, rather than saying just route it as a donation and not paying tax and doing the proper thing. So for example, like things like teacher training, or advising on fund management, designated fund management, that takes specialized accounting, things like that. So.
So the
Yeah, I don't
potential
have a strict,
of a hybrid model as well, right?
Yeah.
To have some functions and value propositions to be in the nonprofit space, and those that is a little bit closer to a strong business model, and then that can be in the social enterprise side of the house. Tamara, any thoughts before we go to the last question?
Yeah, I am a big believer that with whatever resources and whoever is right in that team of yours and the need of the community that is surrounding you and wherever community that you want to serve, just see what is the skill set by your team and what is the skill set of the community. We come into a community and then we implement ABCD, asset-based community development.
Yeah.
Where we ask these people what do they want to do, because often the people that we try to serve are the people who, sustainably speaking, it's best if they're the one running it as well alongside you. So we work with a lot of charities. That's why we become a social enterprise, because we saw the gap lacking. And for me personally, I just love the business side more than just kind of, it's more active. So that's the role that I choose to play. Again, I would say it really depends on where you feel like your 20% would give 80% of the most value.
Right. So assessing what is the space that you're in, which gap are you bridging, and what is the 20% of the thing that you do that gives you 80% of the value, right? I would end off with this question, and then we'll go back to Mentimeter to hear from our audience again for the final time before we wrap up the session. You mentioned also bringing people along with you, and all three of you are inspiring change makers and social innovators. What are some of the strategies that you can share to help your leadership team, your team behind you, to balance this financial stability needs and operational needs and social transformation? There are so many different matrix that you're trying to push at the same time. How do you ensure that your leadership team stays with you and remain on this path of a purpose-driven business? Maybe starting with Joy?
I think I've learned through mistakes, because I tried to move too quickly before and nobody understood what I was doing. Especially setting up a data labeling workplace. But I think the biggest lesson I learned, individualized attention is powerful. Paying attention to specific people constantly, it just greases the wheels of cooperation in the future, and it just enriches your own life, right? It reminds you that it's not just about the work, but it's about who's doing the work and how are we all growing through this. So individualized attention. The other thing is surrounding yourself with at least one or two key people that are going to be holding you accountable, someone with a complementary set of skills. So I'm more of a big picture, ideation kind of person, and I'll, put out big ideas there. But I have good coworkers who are much more process oriented, really good at project management and execution, attentive to the people side of things. So that's helped me a lot to stay grounded with the rest of the team.
So surround yourself with people of complementary skills, but yet at the same time, don't go too fast, but have individualized attention to each person on your leadership team, to check in on them to ensure that they're still with you all the way, right? Kim Ping.
I think for me it's quite simple. So basically, what we do is that we hire people who are passionate, who has the right mentality, the heart to do good. I think that is more of one of the foremost things that we are looking at. So the rest of things will come, by just training them. So we talk about financial stability, all this kind of stuff. So this one we'll be able to train them. Because my partners, all these, they are running, they're funds managers. So they are able to have the kind of expertise to teach them how to do the financial stability part of it. So I think first and foremost is really getting the right people on board. The person who are passionate, who has a heart for the community. That is the most important thing.
Right. So it starts from having the right people in the right roles and position, and the people with the heart in the right place, the right posture,
Correct.
and the passion.
So we prefer to hire fresh graduates, people who are fresh, so it's easy to mold them because they are fresh sheet of papers. So we hire a lot of fresh graduates, so we kind of like able to mold them, kind of like pump in our culture into them.
Okay.
So because you hire people who are, veterans, very kind of like mature, it's very difficult to shape their thinking.
Right.
So you hire one we used to hire very senior guys. So when I hire one senior guy, you have to hire army of people behind him. So for us, it's like, it really doesn't make sense.
Got it. Tamara, last word from you. How do you ensure that your leadership team is with you all the way?
Yeah, to be very honest, I'm still learning in the journey.
Okay.
But also, my team would always say prayer is a big part of what they love about the company culture. We pray up there every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it keeps us all centered.
Great. Prayer every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that brings you back to the common purpose and the original intention, right, of why everyone is on this journey together.
Exactly.
It keeps you very, very grounded.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Tamara. So now to our audience. We started with getting to know the audience through Mentimeter, and we have a very, very fruitful conversation over the last 1.5 hours. Going back to Mentimeter, menti.com with the code 19697426. Tell us, what is your biggest takeaway from this session after listening to all the wonderful sharing by Joy, Kim Ping, and Tamara? What is your biggest takeaway? You have, I think, 3 words this time round. So we have longer words on the word cloud. Right business model, heart of compassion, relationship, knowledge to help society, poverty elevation, identify gaps and opportunity, sustainability, blessing, I love that, gifts, and people-centered. Thank you. Those are wonderful takeaway. And also last 2 Mentimeter questions just to wrap up the session before we thank our speakers. The next question is, I will recommend this session to your friends and network. Oh, great. We have a very high rating of 94% to recommend your session to this network, to your network and friends. Thank you very much. And the last question, overall, are you satisfied with the online experience of ELC 2021? We have a huge team of people on stage, behind the stage that brings this experience to you through a lot of heart and hard work as well. Great, mostly satisfied, extremely satisfied, somewhat satisfied. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Help me to thank our speakers today, Joy, Kim Ping, and Tamara, for sharing your wonderful heart and your stories and your experience. It has been very, very inspirational, and I hope that our attendees listening to us today would also be part of the whole movement of purpose-driven business and leveraging on business and social innovation for good. So thank you for joining us today at this masterclass of Is the Business of Business Just Business? After this session, there would be a session on healthcare dialogue at 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And we also invite you to check out the exhibitor booth, connect with the speakers, and we look forward to hosting you at ELC 2023. Thank you for joining us. Take care and stay safe.
Eagles to me is a voice of reason in ministry as well as in the marketplace. A voice of sanity to a certain extent in a world where there's a lot of information.
The Eagles are thought leaders in many of these areas that integrates very real, pertinent issues in not only Christian life but in the larger community and society. Mobilize Christians who have been placed in very key positions or strategic positions to address some of the social issues.
The passion, the stickability, the gung-ho-ness never change. Our hair will get whiter, but the spirit never changed.
Eagles has meant food, fun, and fellowship, but also learn how to serve God and people with professionalism, integrity, and excellence.
What really impacted me is that 25 years ago when I knew all of you, and now 25 years later, all of you have gone stronger and even more committed with no signs of letting up in your mission.
I look at Eagles ministry and I see the work that they have been doing all these years over the decades. That tenacity to go on and build solid substance for people has been one to be admired, and I've been admiring from afar for a long, long time.
The power of just a few individuals who are passionate, and really are just sold out in wanting to do something for God and to make the impact in the marketplace, not just staying within your usual comfortable confines, but really going out into areas that sometimes are unfamiliar and even maybe taking a big risk doing it.
When something sticks together for a long time, there's some glue behind it, right? And that's the credibility. These folks here at Eagles is really about that camaraderie and the availability of their time, of their resources, and of their heart and passion. I've known these men and women for a long time, and they've impacted thousands of people all over the world. Where Eagles is, that's where amazing things can happen.